Hello and welcome back to Dark Lord Gaming Entertainment. Those of you that have been members of my Discord may have noticed that for quite some time, one particular game has taken up, well, a good chunk of my time. And that game would be Remnant from the Ashes. This game takes place in a post-apocalyptic Earth, as well as other worlds. And it's honestly just one of the funnest games I've played in quite some time. It's 3-person co-op, 2-person co-op, solo, whatever you want to play. And it's just a shoot 'em up fun time. There's 3 different modes. You got your story mode, which takes you through right now 1 or 2 campaigns, depending on whether you have the DLC or not. And you have the adventure mode, which basically lets you run around specific zones and just loot dungeons and all that fun stuff. And then you have the survival mode, which basically you're thrown in there buck naked and you're given 1,000 scrap to choose a weapon, a piece of armor, whatever you think you'll need for that level of survival. Then you're teleported to a random zone where you basically shoot up the area, collect scrap, and basically see how long you can survive. Now, I've only dabbled with the survival a little bit, but from what I've played, it's quite fun. It's a good way to keep the game replayable and keep things interesting. In the campaign as well as adventure, you have 4 different difficulties. There's normal, there is no easy mode, which I don't like playing easy mode anyway. There's hard, then there's nightmare, then I believe the last one's called ultra nightmare. I'll put an addition if I'm wrong there. And basically, a lot of people have compared it to like Dark Souls with guns. It does dabble in that area, though it's not as unforgiving as Dark Souls. You don't lose experience when you die. In fact, that's one of the parts that helps you get better. You just keep gaining experience until you finish it. Some of the fights, some of the boss fights are insanely difficult. Some of them are insanely easy. And the maps, when you're going through it, are procedurally generated to a point. You're going to have certain setups for certain dungeons, as well as there is a progression through the dungeons due to some parts of the main map being locked off. When you go through it the first time and then you go through a dungeon, it puts you out the other side, so then you can open a door and connect the areas. The music is amazing. The graphics, depending on your hardware, are amazing. Honestly, with recording it or streaming it, it even cripples my Ryzen 3700X and my RTX 2080 Super, unless I have the settings set to lower than ultra and no field of view modifier. So do bear that in mind. It can be run on older hardware, although you will not be getting the best settings. But all in all, like I said, I love the game. I love the playstyle. It's fun to play with friends. It's fun to play solo. Honestly, what they said with Fallout 76, that you'd get the same experience playing solo or with friends, when they lied about that, this game does it. This game absolutely does it. Although it being obviously not the same due to the talking that comes with friends, it's the same, what I've found, generally the same difficulty when you're playing with friends or when you're playing alone. And it's the same play styles, the same mechanics, the same everything. And it's just one hell of a game. I'm honestly gotta say, I'm impressed. I picked it up free when it was on the Epic Games Store for free. And then I bought it on Steam because screw giving money to Epic. This game was developed by Gunfire Games, published by Perfect World Entertainment, running on the Unreal Engine 4. It's classified as an action-adventure third-person shooter over the shoulder. And it's great. You go through the campaign, you start out seeing a man die. Honestly, that's one of my favorite ways to start out games, is when already there's a loss right in the beginning. That's why I enjoyed the first couple seasons of Game of Thrones. That's why I enjoyed Fargo when it was on television. But basically after that, you're knocked unconscious and you're brought into Ward 13. It's an underground bunker where human survivors live. The world has been run over by the Gwari, or as the humans call it, the Root. Basically, they are living tree demon things, if that makes any sense. Basically, they're an antagonist. And your main goal of the whole thing is to look for a man named Andrew Ford, who is the founder of Ward 13 and knows a lot more about how to stop the Root than anyone else. Going through that, you eventually come across someone known as the Root Mother. She tells you what you need to do to find Ford. You need to get to the labyrinth. Labyrinth guy tells you you need to go where the labyrinth takes you. You're not going to get where you're expected to go, but you'll get where you need to go. And then through that, first place aside from Earth that you go is a place called Rom. It's basically a desert. Have to deal with radiation. And you get to the Undying King. Basically, from what I've collected, he harvests people's life essence in order to keep himself alive. And then you're told to go into a world uncorrupted by the Gwari, the Root, in order to get the heart of their guardian, which the guardians of these worlds protect the world from the Root. Earth obviously died out a while ago, so the Root were able to invade. Rom's had died out, but the Undying King is keeping the Root at bay. And you're brought to a world called Corsus, which they have their guardian, so the Root has not touched the planet or world or whatever the hell they're going by. I'm honestly unsure for a lot of it because it doesn't really clearly state it unless you actively look for the lore. But so you talk to the Undying King, you go to Corsus, you're going to meet the Iskall Queen, and she's going to ask you to get the heart for her as well. My assumption, so that she can become more powerful. From what I gathered, when you get the heart to the Undying King, he's giving it to something. My guess, to rebirth something. And then after all that, you're brought to Yesha, which is a jungle world full of, like, ram people. Then you go through that, you learn there's a rebellion against the Empire, Star Wars, but with basically Ewoks. And then after all that, you find Ford in a prison cell, and he tells you that you need to go to Ward 17, which is what he says where it all began. There you find out that a young boy was controlling the Root this whole time, and honestly that makes sense. One boy, everything should be fair. You know what? Make everyone the same, everything's fair. So it makes sense why the Root would have had a young boy be their purpose to invade the Earth. And then once you defeat, well, he's called the Dreamer. Once you defeat the Dreamer, He is controlled by a root exoskeleton sort of thing. And then you defeat that, and everything's all fine and dandy. You get back on your boat, you go home, game ends. From the Ashes campaign is over. Now, with Subject 2923, brings an addition to the story. Basically, the Root still haven't gone. You stopped their invasion point, but the Root is still very active and roaming the Earth. So you need to go stop the Root. You start off, you're searching for Ward Prime. Not 100% on the lore there, but Ward Prime, if you start there, you start right off fucking yourself in the ass. Ward Prime basically takes you to this frozen world. I believe it's called Resium. There you get to fight rat people, and you meet this human girl who's befriended the guardian of this world. She calls the Root the Shadow, and so basically the Root has been following her. It's now following you, trying to get in that world. And the only thing that and she's the only one that's able to save the universe from the Root for whatever reason. So basically, until the Guardian that she's befriended tells her, no, you go with him, she's running away from you. Once you finally get her, you fight what seems to be, no pun intended, the Root of the Root. And then once you've beaten the first phase, she conjures you up this supposedly unwieldy weapon that is supposed to defeat it. Honestly, that fight I'd say that's the hardest fight in the game. Second hardest would be Ixalis from Corsus. And even that, it's easy once you've gotten the hang of it. But as for fighting Nemesis, which is the final boss of Subject 2923, that is by far the hardest fight in the game. And even then, I'm sure it would be easy once you got the hang of it. I've just only done it twice. And then after that, the world is saved, the universe is saved, the Root's gone, and end credits. It actually was rather anticlimactic, although, in all honesty, this is the most fun I've ever had playing a game. I still find myself, even after beating both the campaigns twice, I still find myself coming back to the game, joining people's groups, because that is an option. You can make your game public, or you can join people's public games and just run through it, because there's still stuff I haven't collected. I haven't come across the beam rifle yet. It's eluded me. I actually was just in someone's game where the last dungeon they were in, they collected the beam rifle, and so it's right there, but just couldn't get it. It's the game's replayable. There's hard mode, there's nightmare, there's one more after nightmare. So you can always increase the difficulty, as well as then with that, once you increase it to at least hard, or you go through survival mode, you collect glowing shards to get yourself skins for your armor, which I do like. There's no microtransactions in this game from what I can tell. It's all just there. At least, yeah, there's no microtransactions in this game. And honestly, that's a relieving sight, because normally you see a bunch of microtransactions, even with full price paid for games. And the replayability is just great. The game is great. And I can see myself playing this for quite some time. I have been taking breaks now because I don't want it to become boring for me, and it's getting to the point where if I kept playing it constantly, it might be. But that's just due to the way I work. It's if I play a game too much, it's gonna start getting boring and repetitive. But right now I'm at it where it's honestly the best game I've played in a long time. And I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm going to continue to thoroughly enjoy it. And if this review has given you guys any want to play it, then I hope you thoroughly enjoy it. But as for that, I think that probably about wraps it up. I don't know how much of this I'm going to cut out, but I do thank you guys ever so much for watching, and as always, have a good one. Peace out.